Estados Unidos, encabezada por la presidenta del Congreso, Nancy Pelosi.
I'm Congressman Jim McGovern from Massachusetts, and I'm proud to be part of this delegation with Speaker Pelosi, along with some of my other colleagues here, Congresswoman Scanlon from Pennsylvania, Chairman Elliot Engel of New York, Chairwoman Nydia Velasquez of New York, Chairwoman Lucille Roybal Allard, Congressman Henry Cuellar, Congressman Mata Coleman Radawagan, Congresswoman Norma Torres, Congressman of California. Congressman Radawagan is from America Samoa. Congressman Anthony Brown of Maryland. Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, as I mentioned, from Pennsylvania. Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia from Illinois. Congresswoman Katie Hill from California. And Congresswoman Lauren Underwood from Illinois. We are on a delegation to visit Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras, three countries that are experiencing a great deal of hardships, three countries where many of its citizens are migrating to the United States. We believed it was important to come here and to see firsthand what the reality is, because a lot of the discussion has been on what happens at the border. Not enough discussion has been on what is happening in these countries. The bottom line is, if the United States wants to deal effectively with migration, we have to acknowledge the hardships in places like El Salvador. We need to partner with El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras to help some of these countries rebuild, to help create more opportunity, to help deal with issues of impunity, of human rights violations, of gang violence. There are a number of issues that need to be addressed, but they need to be addressed here internally, and we in the United States need to be a partner. I said earlier that what we should have done when the conflict in El Salvador ended is we should have worked with countries in the region and countries around the world and initiated a new Marshall Plan to help redevelop Central America. The bottom line is, people are coming to the United States because they feel they have to. And some of the people we talked to are fleeing some of the worst violence imaginable. We just had a great meeting with Father Tojera and Father Andreu of the UCA, but with others, people who were witnesses to the El Mozote massacre. We believe that justice needs to happen in the El Mozote case. We believe that the Salvadoran military needs to cooperate and provide information in that case. We believe the United States government, our agencies, need to cooperate and provide information so that justice can be done. And we believe that any amnesty law that provides blanket amnesty would be a step backwards, is something we strongly oppose, and we're going to tell that to President Bukele when we see him. We also believe that El Salvador has to grapple with the challenge of the internally displaced people within this country. For too long, that has been a population that has been ignored. We're going to raise that issue with President Bukele when we see him. Finally, let me just say, I have been coming to El Salvador since the early 1980s. I spent a great deal of time on this campus when I was a young aide to Congressman Joe Moakley of Massachusetts, investigating the murders of the Jesuit priests that occurred on this campus. And before we met at our meeting today, we did a tour, and we stopped and we said a prayer at the site where 6 Jesuit priests, their housekeeper and daughter, were murdered. And that is a reminder of the horrifying war that occurred in this country, the civil war that occurred in El Salvador. It is also a reminder to those of us in the United States of a dark chapter in our history. We took sides in that war. We provided a lot of military assistance, including to those who murdered these Jesuits, without conditioning them on human rights. I believe that we have a special obligation to this country and to other countries in the region, given our history. We need to now be a more constructive player. We need to be a true friend, and we need to help these countries move forward. And so I appreciate all the meetings that we have had today. We're going to meet with President Bukele after we leave all of you. But we believe that human rights ought to be a centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy. And that means that we are going to be a voice on behalf of the victims in El Salvador, We're going to be a voice on behalf of those pursuing justice, and we are going to be a voice on behalf of those who are pursuing a sensible and a compassionate response to the migrants. And just one final thing, I think it is important, if the U.S. is going to be a partner, that we lift the freeze on U.S. assistance to El Salvador. We need to continue to support organizations, whether they're human rights organizations, organizations that deal with violence against women, organizations that help provide opportunity. We need to restore that funding immediately, and we're going to bring that message back when we go to Washington. It is now my honor to introduce the leader of our delegation, somebody who has been focused on El Salvador and Central America throughout her career, who has been a leader on human rights, and we're proud that she's leading this delegation, the Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Mr. McGovern. Thank you. Chairman McGovern is the chair of the Rules Committee, and when he was in age to Chairman Moakley, he was the chair of the Rules Committee, and that's how they were able to do so much for El Salvador at that time and continue to do so. It is an honor to be with all of our delegation. We have serious, as you heard, chairs of committees. We have leaders on their own committees, but we have 4 members of the freshman class with us. So as we have our established members, we have the future with us in this delegation, and we're very, very proud of that. It is an honor for all of us to travel here with Jim McGovern. Again, he has been champion, is too meager a word, a champion, inspiration, spiritual leader for us in the Congress on the subject of justice for all in El Salvador, and indeed throughout the world, but El Salvador has been his special focus. I associate myself with the remarks that he made. All of us have spoken about that in the course of the day. We had an intense schedule. But I leave here not only inspired by the people we heard from, the displaced persons, the victims of El Mozote, but also to take back with me this gift from Darilla Marquez, who survived El Mozote. I told her that in the middle 80s, before I was a member of Congress, I went as a member of a human rights delegation from California, bipartisan, not political, to El Mozote. And after we finished that meeting, that evening, we went to see President Duarte, and we expressed the concern that we had about justice not being done. That was more than 30 years ago. More than 30 years ago. Today, we will deliver that same message to the president when we visit him. But the comments that Mr. McGovern made about what we will do when we go home are not just something to say here. They are our commitment. I want to say a special thank you to El Salvador, because when I was on that trip, again, not as a member of Congress, but as a human rights activist, I was at an orphanage with little children, and it broke my heart to see them alone, well, not without parents there and without family. And in my own heart of hearts, I prayed for them constantly, and I made a promise to them, which they couldn't hear because it was in my heart, that I would never forget them. And they intensified my commitment to human rights in such a way that coming back here now to hear some of the same concerns that are the cause for migration to the United States. And when we see the president, and we'll probably have a press opportunity then, we'll talk about security, prosperity, and governance, the 3 pillars of our cooperation with El Salvador, and how, as I quote often, Pope Paul VI said, if you want peace, work for justice. If you want peace in your society, work for justice. We're all here to work for justice together. We're here to pay our respects to the people of El Salvador. We're here to listen and learn to how solutions they are suggesting, whether a displaced person or a victim of violence in another way. We're here to show our cooperation, to go forward, to keep people here. We heard today, die or leave. We want them to live and stay in their own country, contributing to the greatness of El Salvador. And again, we're honored to be here on this campus. I visited here in the 90s as a member of Congress, and Father Andrew and Father Tahira welcomed us. We were proud to lay a wreath at the burial site of the sixth priest, and to do so in the presence of Chairman Jim McGovern was a special honor. Thank you so much.
Vamos a tomar preguntas de la prensa. La primera pregunta es por Nelson Rentería de la agencia Reuters.
Sí, muy buenas tardes para cada uno de los congresistas. Para el speaker Pelosi, quisiera preguntarle si considera que Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras tienen capacidad para asumir un acuerdo migratorio como el llamado tercer país seguro, como el que recientemente acaba de firmar Guatemala con Estados Unidos, o están siendo presionados para ello. Y si también la Cámara de Representantes podrían frenar este tipo de intentos de la Casa Blanca.
I am not myself convinced of the effectiveness of a third country solution. I don't consider it a solution. I think that remains to be seen. When we were in Guatemala yesterday, we asked what the terms were of that agreement. And this hasn't really been written down. We haven't seen what that is. So I think it remains to be seen as to whether that is even a good idea. And I would not encourage it further. But some of my colleagues may want to speak. Mr. Payard, did you want to speak to us on that subject?
Bueno, no sabemos si estamos que quiere hacer un arreglo, como lo hizo con Guatemala, lo quieren hacer, como entendemos nosotros, con El Salvador y Honduras. Es algo que necesitamos que ver si hay la capacidad aquí en El Salvador, y nosotros estamos de la opinión que va a estar muy difícil para hacer esto, y por eso nosotros queremos hacer todo posible abajo del líder, del presidente de la Cámara de Diputados, para no tener ese tipo de arreglo aquí. Pero eso es algo que sabemos que el presidente tiene otra, la administración tiene otra opinión, y nosotros tenemos otra opinión.
La segunda pregunta corresponde.
Before we have another question, we were very blessed on our delegation when we were in Guatemala, and indeed for the visit to the Northern Triangle by someone born in Guatemala, Congresswoman Norma Torres, who was received and welcomed back with great joy in Guatemala. Thank you.
Buenas tardes a todos. Soy Norma Torres de California, nacida en Guatemala, y como dijo la presidenta de la Cámara del Congreso en Estados Unidos, estamos aquí, nuestros colegas, somos 12, para venir a apoyarlos a ustedes en su seguimiento para la paz, para justicia y para mejorar las condiciones aquí en El Salvador. Estamos aliados con ustedes y todos estamos comprometidos en eso. En el tema del tercer país, por mi persona, yo ya he dado mi opinión muy clara. En Guatemala no acepto que puede ser un tercer país seguro. Pienso lo mismo para El Salvador y lo mismo para Honduras. Eso no quiere decir que podemos tener unos acuerdos donde juntos podemos buscar una ayuda y trabajar para mejorar el tema de las maras, el tema de muchas personas que se están yendo pidiendo asilo a los Estados Unidos, al Suramérica, escapando una vida de violencia aquí. Tengo mucha esperanza. Ustedes acaban de elegir un presidente nuevo y esperamos que podamos trabajar con él. Estamos dispuestos a trabajar con él. Muchos niños en la frontera del sur que yo he visitado también tienen una esperanza de que el pueblo salvadoreño se va a parar y va a mejorar las cosas, porque algún día ellos pueden regresar y mirar su futuro aquí en El Salvador. Muchas gracias.
La segunda pregunta a cargo de Lourdes Quintanilla de Contrapunto.
Buenas tardes a todos. Mi pregunta es si como congresistas saben ustedes o han trabajado en avances o novedades para lograr una solución a las personas que tienen TPS y DACA.
Oh, that's Congresswoman Sue Rowland. Madam Chair is chair of the Homeland Security Committee of the Appropriations Committee and is the author of the DREAM, the Promise Act.
Yes, actually, a TPS is something that we have been working very, very hard on to convince our administration that we need to extend TPS to those who are from the countries such as El Salvador, because based on all the information that we have gotten, is that at this point in time, El Salvador would not be able to absorb all of those who are in the United States at this time. So in order to make it possible, we need to make sure that the infrastructure, everything that is needed in this country to be able to absorb those who want to come back to El Salvador can come back, but can come back to conditions in which El Salvador, based on its economy, its safety, and all the infrastructure that is needed, is in place so that the government then can receive them in a very positive way.
Buenas tardes, yo soy la congresista Nidia Velázquez de Nueva York y junto a Lucy Roybal Allard escribimos esa parte de la legislación TPS. Yo quiero que ustedes entiendan que nosotros pasamos esa legislación en la Cámara de Representantes. Ahora lo que queda es que Mitch McConnell en el Senado vote y traiga a votación esa legislación. Aquí hay muchos familiares que tienen, personas que tienen TPS, que viven en estados que son republicanos, como la Florida. So, hay que pedirle a los personas que viven en la Florida que le pongan presión a gente, a senadores como Marco Rubio, que tienen la obligación y responsabilidad de representar a aquellas personas que tienen TPS y que viven en el estado de la Florida.
If I just might add to that, some of us have been in Congress long enough to have been privileged to work with Chairman Joe Moakley, Mr. McGovern's former boss, when he passed the TPS law for El Salvador. Since then, our country has been blessed by the presence of so many Salvadorans in America, and I say that as a Californian, so I know firsthand. And we would like to have comprehensive immigration reform so we can go beyond this kind of a debate into a place where comprehensive immigration reform will enable people to fully participate without any doubt as to their status in the United States. And should they wish to return to El Salvador, that they are able to do so to a country that shares its prosperity and justice for all.
La tercera y última pregunta será por Senia Oliva del Diario de Hoy.
Buenas tardes a todos. ¿Qué medidas o será posible tomar alguna medida ante la forma en la que se ha estado dando las últimas redadas y la forma en cómo continúa la separación de familias?
The raids. Well, I think the raids. Many of us have, in our religious faith, believe that all of us are children of God, containing a spark of divinity that needs to be respected. We believe that the practice that is being employed on the border and with the raids do not respect the dignity and worth of people. Again, we need comprehensive immigration reform. When we complete our visit to the Northern Triangle, which will include Honduras tomorrow, we will go to McAllen, Texas, where we have been, many of us, many times, the border from California east to see the conditions under which people are treated there. Separation of family, as I have 5 children, 9 grandchildren, many of us know the importance of bonding within a family. This is just totally, completely unacceptable. So we have to move, and we're going to go in a couple of days to ensure that we are moving in a positive direction to make sure that we're respecting the dignity and worth of everyone there, and that we are honoring our own values as a country. We've all spoken out against the raids. We have, again, what's the point? The point we should have is, let's make sure people are fully documented by having comprehensive immigration reform. My colleagues, anyone want to speak on that?
Jesús García, nuevo miembro del Congreso por el Estado de Illinois, en la ciudad de Chicago. Con respecto a la pregunta de la separación de familias, todos los que estamos aquí como parte de esta delegación hemos pronunciado nuestra oposición a la separación de familias en la frontera, pero también en instancias como la redada que se realizó ayer en el estado de Mississippi. Esto ocurrió en el primer día de clases en el sistema de escuelas públicas en el estado. Esto vino solo unos días después del masacre que ocurrió en El Paso. Nosotros repudiamos estas acciones porque lo que se está haciendo es cambiando una larga tradición en los Estados Unidos de recibir personas que buscan refugio, que buscan asilo y que vienen de circunstancias donde son perseguidos, donde sus vidas están en gran peligro. Así es que hemos sido muy consistentes en nuestros pronunciamientos a favor de leyes humanitarias y, por supuesto, de la reunificación familiar. Muchas gracias.
This is the second time I've been to this beautiful country in 2 months. And I keep coming back, as my colleagues do, because we care very much about the relationship between this country and our country. Whether we like it or not, we're joined at the hip. The problems with immigration are problems of both countries and really need to be taken care of by both countries. So we're here as representatives of the United States Congress. I'm from New York, and we have many Salvadoran people in New York, is to say that when we work together, we have to come up with something better than what we have now. As the speaker said, we're all horrified at the stories we get about what's happening to children at the borders. That shouldn't happen. We're opposed to it happening. On the other hand, there has to be some kind of laws that go into effect that are fair to all and will do both countries well. And so the fact that so many of us came here from all different parts of the country should give the people here the knowledge that we really do care and we want to work with you, because this is a problem for all of us, and it's a problem that we need to work together. So thank you for the hospitality, and thank you for welcoming us. We're going to keep getting this till we get it right. Thank you.
Let me just say, as I said at the beginning, we have a history in this country. The United States has a long history in El Salvador, and not all of it has been good, especially with regard to human rights. We supported the war here. Not we. Our country supported the war here with hundreds of millions of dollars. When the war ended, our aid dropped dramatically. We should have stayed and helped this country rebuild. We did not. We deported gang members back to El Salvador. And we have not been engaged with El Salvador as a good friend and a neighbor should have been over these years. So if ever there was a country, if ever there were people who the United States should have compassion for, it is the Salvadoran people. And we are here on this campus where 6 Jesuit priests were murdered because they spoke up for justice and for dignity. In their opinion, nobody was invisible, everybody was important. Well, in the spirit of those Jesuit priests, we believe that everybody is important, that nobody is invisible, and that everybody deserves to be treated with dignity. And so we have a special obligation to this country, and we have a moral obligation to this country, and I hope that we live up to it.
Gracias por participar en la conferencia de prensa.